Hey gents, thanks for attending. For those of you who could make it, the first session in the Beginners Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu course. Amongst other things, we mainly focused on our basic positions and some of the submissions. The basic positions are control positions, and I think the control is the important words because we want to be able to control an opponent. We talked about mount, guard, side control, kesekatami and back control. And later on, we'll go through Ashigarami north-south. But today we went through mount and guard, and I sort of linked those together because if you're in mount, it's also upside down guard, of course. And if you go from mount on top of a person and flip to guard, there's not a lot of confusion on behalf of your opponent. If you go from side control to kesekatami, there's not a lot of confusion on your opponent's behalf. So I've grouped those together. And back control, again, is a relatively new position compared to these. But of course, if you jump from that cluster to back control, suddenly you are in mount and you end up in back control. There is a much larger level of surprise on your opponent, so you get the jump on it. So we went through that. We went through transitions between each. We then went through some of the attacks. I call them the big six, rear naked choke or the sleeper, guillotine, triangle. So those three are neck attacks. The Kimura or the figure four, the Kimura and the figure four, and the armbar. And later on we're going to do Ashigarami, some kind of leg control and some kind of an attack on the legs. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 we did today. 3 were neck attacks. 2 were arm attacks. And then what we needed to do is we need to start to get your brain working so it chooses a particular position and attack with the least amount of time. For example, if I come at you in like a rugby tackle, you know that you're going to sink in a guillotine. If for some reason or other I get away from the rugby tackle and I turn my back to you, you know you're going to do a sleeper. If I put my hand on your knee like this, that's obvious that you're going to do a Kimura. If for some reason or other my hand is like this, that's the Americana or the figure four. So Kimura, where you grab their wrist with your opposite hand, and then you roll your hand over the top and grab your own wrist. So that's the Kimura. So we've got chokes, guillotine from there, sleeper from the back. We've got a bent arm lock. Okay, so that was the third one, the Kimura or the figure four. If they straighten their arm, we've got the arm bar. We did that from mount. You can do it from other positions also. And the fifth one was a neck attack, a triangle. So we mentioned, and I did briefly show, but we mentioned the normal triangle using your legs, where they've got one arm in and one arm out. We also mentioned the das. We also mentioned the anaconda, where they have one arm in and one arm out. It just depends what part of your body you use to compress their arm and neck together so they can't breathe and therefore have a submission. So our attacks that we choose, if he comes straight at you, there's your guillotine. If he puts his arm out like this, if I flip myself this way, you've got a head-arm choke or a triangle with your arms or with your legs or whatever. So there's the head-arm choke, or again, a normal choke. He turns his back, sleeper, if he goes at you, guillotine. If he puts one hand up, there's a head-arm choke. So you can see they should come to mind pretty quickly. If he happens to have his arm like this, there is the Kimura. If he lifts his arm this way, there's the figure four. If he straightens it, there's an arm bar. So those were the basic 5 attacks, and they're like clusters. So I might have said an arm bar, you can do an arm bar a whole lot of ways. I might have said a head-arm choke, you can do a head-arm choke a lot of different ways, from a lot of different positions. But your brain needs to be able to quickly go, oh, head-arm, or triangle. Oh, Kimura. Oh, arm bar. He's facing back, sleeper straight away. So you need to be able to quickly move into one of those 5, and then later on we'll go through leg attacks. So that is our basics of what we've been doing so far. As we tighten them up, we also make strings of movements. So we might have you chaining together several attacks, and in between each of those attacks, your opponent defends against each attack. So they're relatively easy to remember because they all follow each other on like a ladder. This forces your brain to think, what if this works, what if this doesn't, where will I move next? It forces your brain to think in longer lines of movement. It also, in a tricky way, teaches you how to defend a movement. So we're chaining together attacks. Now, as you can see, I quickly rubbed everything off and put our system of movement where we're going. Our aim is to move down towards there where we want to have an attack where they submit. So defense, escape, control, attack. This also works in reverse. So watch this. For example, for every attack there's a defence. For every controlling position there's an escape. For every escape you should try to reverse that or reverse their intention by continuing to tighten your control. And for every defence, that's a specific response to an attack. So for every defence there's an attack. For every defence, there's an attack, and so on and so on and so on. So it goes across that way. And you've just got to make sure that you're concentrating on what you can control. So thanks, gents. If you've got any questions, give us a yell. Otherwise, I'll see you on Thursday, and we'll add to what we've gone on so far. There will be a little bit of revision each week, but quite often it's purely so that I can build on previous knowledge. See you then.